Welcome, and thanks for joining Pastor Chuck Bernal and Lifepointe Church. For the outline of this message, more exclusive online content, and other resources, please visit www.pointe.us. That is www.pointe.us. Let's join Pastor Chuck.
All right, we are so glad you're here. Hey, thanks for coming out. If you have your program, I want you to pull out your message notes for today. This is Mission Sunday here at Lifepointe Church. We're excited about our student ministry mission trip coming up next week. But more importantly, we're excited about the fact that you were made for a mission, okay? Everybody here has been made for a mission. So, we're going to have our audience participation part of this as we get started. I want you to say on three, I was made for a mission. When I count to three, we're going to say it. 1, 2, 3, I was made for a mission. That's true. God has made you, created you, designed you, fashioned you so that you can have an impact in this world. Now, the problem is oftentimes we're not doing that, okay? There are a lot of reasons why. But there are a lot of times that we are settling for a lot less than God has for us. You know, I was thinking this week, and I was reading an article about the American culture in 2016, and the article made a very important point that I thought really applies to what we're talking about today. The article said this, and I want you to see it on screen. The greatest problems Americans face is not money, work, or even relationships. It is boredom. Now think about that for a minute. It is boredom. The truth is, most Americans live bored lives. We're doing more, buying more, going more, and enjoying it less. Now, think about that for a minute. Let your mind wrap around this, okay? You have cable TV, you have internet access, you have a car, can get in your car and go anywhere you want to go to a restaurant, go to a movie, go to the mall. There's myriads of activities we can do, and yet oftentimes we're sitting around and we're just bored to death. You know why? Because we're living for less than God intended. When you are living for less than God intended, you are always, look up here, you're always going to be bored. The purpose of your life is far greater than your own personal fulfillment, your own peace of mind, even your happiness. The purpose of your life is far greater than your family, your career, or your bank account. If you want to know why you were placed on this planet, you must begin with God. I want you to see that. You were born by His purpose and for His, say it out loud, mission. And until you understand that, life will never make sense. When you're bored, life has no purpose, life has no meaning, and ultimately, life has no lasting joy and satisfaction. But when you give your life to Christ and His mission, you will never spend another bored minute. Now, guys, I'm convinced that we often live for things that are less than intended by God for us. And I would here today to tell you that you will never know the excitement, the thrill, the joy. Nothing can compare to living for a purpose greater than yourself. God has designed you for more than just getting an education, getting a job, having a career, retiring, and then dying at the end of your life. God has created you for much more than that. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. You were made for a mission. Now, if you have your notes, I want you to look in the box because there's a passage that I want you to see from the book of Hebrews. It's going to be right here on screen. Look at what it said. Knowing what lies ahead for you. Now, he's talking to Christians. Knowing what lies ahead for you. So ultimately, what lies ahead for us as believers at the end of this life? Anybody? Heaven, eternity with God, spending the rest of forever with Him. What the writer of Hebrews says, when you focus on what really matters, when you focus on eternity, when you focus on forever and not the here and now, look what it says. You won't become what? You won't become bored with being a Christian. Now, can we have some real talk this morning? Okay, this is Lifepointe. We're known for real talk. We're not going to play it phony. We're not going to pretend. We're going to talk real. Do you ever get bored with being a Christian? Come on. Don't look so pious. You do, and so do I. Okay? Oh, it's Sunday, church. Oh, hum, big deal. So what? Okay, oh, it's life group. So what? Oh, I've got something else going on. I don't want to go. Do you know what? We oftentimes get bored with our faith when our faith ought to be the most exciting component in our life, right? He said, when you start focusing on what really matters, when you start focusing on eternity and what lies ahead for you, you won't become bored with being a Christian. Now, what happens when you become bored with being a Christian? Look at the rest of the verse. What naturally follows when you become bored? You become spiritually dull and you become indifferent to the needs of other people. You can mark it down in your own life. When you are being bored with your Christianity, you're not going to have any spiritual interest. You're going to become spiritually dull, and you're going to become indifferent to the needs of others. That's why you've got to rekindle the fire of God in your life every single day. You've got to rekindle that fire every single day, because you know why? That fire of passion for God, that fire of passion about our faith, that fire of passion for Jesus, that fire that keeps us pumped up and in love with the Lord. You know what happens? Every day, there's a bunch of people in your life that have big buckets of water just pouring on your life. You know what I mean? You go to work, you're all excited about Jesus, and somebody pours a big bucket of water on you. You're all excited about Jesus, and somebody in your family pours a big bucket of water on you. You're all excited about your faith, and then you get a big unexpected bill in the mail, and it just pours a big thing of water on you. And we're constantly facing the battle of people trying to put out the fire of passion in our life. What you have to do is you have to decide every day, I'm going to start focusing on what really matters. I'm going to start remembering that I was made for a mission, that I have been given a ministry, that I'm called to serve God, and I'm going to fan the flame of passion every day in my life so that I don't become bored with my faith. So that I don't become bored with being a Christian. And if we are really honest, okay, honest talk at Lifepointe, there are a lot of days we wake up and we're just bored to death with this whole thing. And if we're not careful, we will become spiritually dull and indifferent. So here's the principle I want you to see at the beginning of today's message. When it comes to God's mission for your life, you're either going to get on board or you will get bored. In other words, you're going to get on board, get excited, get passionate, be fanning that flame, be kindling that fire, or you're just going to get bored to death. Now, the question is, okay, Pastor Chuck, if I want to keep that fire going, if I want to stay passionate, if I want to stay hot for the Lord, if I want to keep things going, how do I do that? I'm glad you asked me that question. Because here's what it says in the very next verse we're going to look at. Give yourselves completely to God, every part of you. You know what you got to do every day? You got to wake up and you got to give yourself again to God, okay? You know, our commitment to God is like a bucket that's got a hole in it. Anybody ever had a bucket that's got a hole in it and you're trying to carry water, and guess what? Water's leaking out of the bucket. Our commitment to God sometimes has a lot of holes in it and it leaks. And so what do you got to do? You got to keep that bucket filled every day. How do you keep that bucket filled? Give yourselves completely to God, every part of you. And why do you do this? Because you've been brought from death to life. Do you know how exciting Christianity is? Well, yeah, it's ho-hum, big deal, so what? Do you ever think about the fact that you were hell-bound and that Jesus Christ, when he died for you, he literally took you and snatched you out of the jaws of hell? Look at that. You've been brought from death to life. You've been rescued. You've been saved. You've been forgiven. And now you want to be used by God for good and for his righteous purposes. Do you know what your life's motto ought to be? I want to be used by God for good. I want to be used by God for good. I want to be used by God for good. Try that, saying that real fast 3 times. I want to be used by God for good, okay? That's your life's motto. Every day I wake up. It's Monday, June 6th, and I got to go to work. You know what you pray? God, I want to give you my life, and I want to be used by you for good today. That's what it means to be on mission. Because here's the thing. We've got this whole mindset that is wrong about mission. We think mission is getting on an airplane flying somewhere. We think mission is getting in a car and driving somewhere. We think mission is something we have to pack some luggage and go and do. Guys, you were made for a mission, and your mission starts at your front door every day. And so tomorrow, how many of you are going to go to work tomorrow? You don't want to, but you're going to go. Let's hear your hand. Raise them high, okay? You know what? That's your mission field, okay? Our students just got out of school. I bet they are breathing a big sigh of relief. I think the teachers among us are even breathing a bigger sigh of relief, right? I used to be a teacher. I could say that. So, you know what? Your school is your mission field. Your job is your mission field. Wherever you go this week, that is your mission field. Now, yeah, there is a formal mission that we may go on to. Guess what? Next Saturday, we have a bunch of people that are going to go to San Antonio on a, quote, mission trip. But you don't have to go on a mission trip to be on mission. You don't have to go somewhere to serve. You can do it right now, right where you are. You give yourselves completely to God, every part of you, and you are used by God for good in your world. Can you imagine what would happen in your life if you woke up every morning and say, God, I'm ready. God, I'm ready. It's going to be a great day. God, I'm on mission. God, I want to be used by you for good today. God, I want to serve you today. Can you imagine how different your life would be if you started living for something bigger than yourself? Guys, you need a cause bigger than yourself to live for that's going to give meaning and purpose to your life. You really do. Okay? Because just buying stuff, doing stuff, going places is not going to fill that void in your life. Okay? I know because I've been there. That's why we're bored. If we think I can just buy this, whatever it is, okay? What's on your wish list right now? If I can just get this, man, I'm going to be so happy. And you are for about this long. Man, if I can just have this dream vacation, if I can just go there, I'm going to be so happy. And you are for about this long. You see, the things of this world satisfy us, yes. The only problem is they have an expiration date, and it's usually about a week or two. The satisfaction you get from the stuff of the world only lasts a short time. That's why the verse said, when you start seeing what's out there ahead of you, when you start living for eternity, when you realize you're made for a mission, it's going to change everything about your life. So what I want to do this morning very, very quickly, okay, that's a promise, by the way. Very, very quickly, I want to talk about how we can develop a mission mindset. Because I want you to stop thinking of missions as something you go and do at a certain time of the year that you pack bags for and you go out and you go somewhere. I want you to develop a missions mindset that says, I am on mission every day and I was made for a mission that God has designed for me. So I want to tell you 5 things from the life of Paul. Anybody ever heard of this guy, Paul, from the New Testament? Paul was probably used, and I think you could arguably say Paul was probably used by God more than any other person in history other than Christ. Paul started churches all over the Roman Empire. Paul single-handedly spread the gospel throughout the Roman Empire, and almost half of the New Testament was written by Paul. There was probably no greater person alive that served God more and was on mission more than Paul. And all of these principles come out of Paul's letter that he wrote to the Corinthians. Now, I want you to know that Paul was writing to Christians just like us. Everybody get on the same page. He was writing to the Corinthian church. Now, did you know of all the churches that Paul wrote to? Look up here. The Corinthian church was the most screwed up church of all. Hey, it's a lot like us, right? I mean, you think about it. They had more problems than any other church. They had more issues than any other church. They had more situations that came up than any other church. In fact, how do we know that? Well, Paul had to write them 2 different letters, okay? I mean, they were so messed up, he couldn't even get it in one. He had to write them a second letter, a follow-up. That's how messed up they were. And so Paul was writing to them, and in the context of this letter he's writing, he's trying to get them to develop a mission mindset, a mission mentality. So here's what it is, Lifepointe Church. God wants us to develop a mission mindset. He wants us to get missions in the very DNA and fabric of who we are. Now, let me tell you what these 5 are. We're going to do them real quick, okay? So write them down. Mission mindset number 1. You got to realize that mission is an incredible privilege. Fulfilling God's mission is an incredible, say it out loud, privilege. Most of us view mission, ministry, or service, and we attach it to the word obligation. We see mission, ministry, and service as a have to and not as a want to. You see the difference? How do you feel when you have to do something? When you're obligated, when you're forced, when you're made to feel guilty? How do you feel about it? You may do it, but you don't want to do it, and you don't take any joy in doing it, right? Am I right about that? Okay? You kids out there. Hello, kids. Your mom says, you got to go clean your room. Now, you are doing that room cleaning because you have to, not because you want to, and you are picking up things, and you're stomping your foot, and you're angry, and you're making that bed, and you're just, why? You have to do it. Now, I see a lot of kids smiling. You do that, don't you, kids, right? You know what I'm talking about. When you have to do something, you take no joy in it. Do you know how the Bible frames ministry, mission, and service? The Bible frames mission, ministry, and service not as obligation, but something that should cause us to have celebration in our lives. In fact, look at how Paul says this. God, in His mercy, has given us this ministry and work to do. It's something that God gave us. And Paul is so excited that God would give him that. And he said, that's why I don't become discouraged. That's why I don't give up. Because I always remember that my ministry, my mission, my service is a gift from God. Do you view it that way? Oh, well, I'm going to do something in the church. I mean, Pastor Chuck made me feel guilty. I really don't want to do this, you know. Oh, I'm going to write my offering check, my tithe. Oh, I hate that, yeah. Man, we ought to be so excited about this stuff. It is an incredible privilege to serve God. Look what he says in this passage. He says, I thank Jesus Christ because He trusted me and He gave me this work of serving Him. Do you view ministry that way, mission that way? That you wake up every morning, man, I'm so excited. Look what God gave me to do. Okay? He said, in the past, I spoke against Christ. In the past, I persecuted Him. In the past, I did all kinds of things to hurt Him. But God showed me mercy. I love that. In spite of his past, God used him. Here's another one. You know what I was like. You see, we kind of think, well, if God really knew what we were like, He would never use us, right? I mean, let me let you in on a little secret. God already knows what you're like. You want a little secret? Like, if God really knew what I was like, I mean, He would never, ever think about you. God already knows everything about you. You know what I was like, Paul said. How I violently persecuted Christians. You know, I already said, if you've been here around here before, I said Paul was a first century terrorist. If Paul were alive today in his state before he met Jesus, you know what he would be? He would be an ISIS member. ISIS. He would be a member of ISIS because he was a terrorist. He said, I did my best to get rid of them. But look, but then something happened. Is that an understatement? For it pleased God in His kindness to choose me and call me even before I was born. Let me let you in on a little secret, guide. God knows everything about you. Even before you were born, God knew everything about you, and He made you anyway. And even before you were born, in spite of all your sins, hang-ups, flaws, mistakes, whatever, God chose you and called you to serve Him. Is that amazing? I want you to think about that. I want you to wrap your mind around that this morning. You were made for a mission, and before you were ever born, before you ever, as they say, a twinkle in your mommy and daddy's eye, God had already chosen you and had already called you to be on mission, to be a minister, and to serve. And guess what? It's something that God did in His kindness. We're kind of like, well, you know, thanks a lot, God, for calling me. God says it's a kindness that you've been called. It's a gift that you've been called. It's something that He did, and look how He ends it. What undeserved mercy. Have you ever linked service, mission, and ministry to mercy? God does. God says when Jesus bled and died on the cross to give you salvation, not only to give you salvation, he gave you a purpose for your life. He gave you a mission. He gave you a ministry. He gave you service. And he always links it. What is mercy anyway? Just so you don't know, you may write this in the margin of your notes. Mercy is undeserved forgiveness and unearned kindness. And Paul says that God in his mercy, in his undeserved forgiveness and unearned kindness, gave me a ministry. Paul always links mercy and ministry together. And it doesn't matter who you are, what you've been, doesn't matter how bad your life is, it doesn't matter anything else. God sees great potential in you, and he's called you and chosen you. You know, one of my life's mottos is on the next screen. Every saint has a past, and every sinner has a future. Therefore, God can use anybody. This is something you ought to cut out and put on your refrigerator. Every saint has a past. Everybody here, no matter how polished and nice and shiny we look on Sunday, we've all got a past. Okay? Some of us have a capital P past. You know what I'm talking about? We have a past. And every sinner has a future. And the cool thing about God in his mercy is that God takes flawed, sinful people in spite of their past, and he uses them to do great things. That's why Paul said this statement. Look at it. He said, you know what I was like. You know what I used to be. You know how bad Paul was? This is true. Read Book of Acts. When Paul became a Christian and he walked into the church, everybody ran. It's true. Read it. They were so scared when Paul walked in the church because of his reputation that they all ran away. Why? Because here was the church killer. Here was the Christian persecutor. Here was the person trying to set Christians in prison. Paul had this reputation that preceded him, and here he is, a brand new Christian. He walks into the church. Hey, brothers, boom, everybody leaves. They were scared to death of this guy. That's why he says, you know what I was like. You know how bad I was. And some of you are sitting there thinking, man, I can identify with that. And you know what? God took Paul, and you know what he did for Paul? He gave him mercy. He gave him undeserved forgiveness and unearned kindness. And then you know what, Paul? He said, Paul, you have a past, but you have a future, and I'm going to use you. That is what is so cool. And so if you're sitting here today and you have this secret fear, you know, Pastor Chuck is saying I'm made for a mission, but he can't possibly mean me. You're sitting here thinking, well, Pastor Chuck is talking about me being a minister. He can't possibly mean me. You know, you're sitting here thinking, well, Pastor Chuck's talking about me serving God. He can't possibly mean me. Because you know why? I'm disqualified. I'm way too bad to serve God. All you got to do is look at Paul. I'm way too bad to serve God. You know what's great about God? God takes the worst people in the world, shows them mercy, cleans them up, and he says, now I got a job for you to do. Isn't that great? And some of you have this secret fear, well, some of you have this secret fear, well, I'm unqualified. I'm not good enough to do this. I don't have enough gifts. I don't have enough talents. I don't have any abilities. What could God do with somebody like me? Let me tell you something. You plus God can do anything. You were made for a mission. And God has a mission for you to do. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you've got to go somewhere to do it. You just have to be willing to serve God right where you are. And don't let the word ministry scare you, because we always think ministry equals pastor. And you're thinking, I will never be a pastor. Ministry in the Bible does not mean pastor. It just means servant. And everybody can be a servant. That's the cool thing. And so God calls young, old, men and women. God calls people with a past. God calls imperfect people to serve him. Nobody is disqualified, and nobody is unqualified. Guess what? You're all in. Okay? You're all in. You all have a mission. You all have been made for a mission. And look at this verse. It is God himself who has made us what we are. So listen, if you have any doubts that God can use you, then you're basically saying, God, you can't do in my life what you promised to do. If you're saying you're unqualified or you're disqualified, you're basically calling God a liar. Because look at what it says. It is God himself who has made us what we are. And if God can change Paul, he can change you. And if God can give Paul a mission, he can give you a mission. If God can make Paul a minister, he can make you a minister. And if God can use Paul to serve, he can use you to serve. And you may be 12 or you may be 80, and you may have a sin in your life, and you may have a past, but it doesn't matter. He has given us new lives from Christ Jesus. And long ago, look what it says. He planned that we should spend our lives in helping others. You will never know greater joy than when you do that. You will never know greater joy than when you spend your life helping. You spend your life building a career, guess what? You're going to retire. Spend your life raising kids, guess what? Those little stinkers grow up and leave. Some of you are saying, amen, I wish they'd hurry up. No, don't. Okay? You spend your life getting a bank account and building, acquiring. And guess what? When you pass on, it's all passed on. Because right after the funeral, everybody's sitting around thinking, boy, I really like that. And, boy, I really like Dad's gun collection. And, you know how it is. You pass on, it's passed on. You're not taking it with you. The only thing that you are going to do in this life that is going to be an investment in his eternity is when you spend your life in helping other people. That is so cool. Mission mindset number 1 says, ministry is an incredible privilege. Look at mission mindset number 2. I want you to write this down. Fulfilling God's mission requires authenticity. What is authenticity? Authenticity means that I am real. I am going to be myself. I'm going to let God work through me. It's that I don't have to be somebody else. I don't have to compare myself to somebody else. I don't have to try to be somebody else. I don't have to try to put on a front. I don't have to try to pretend. If I'm weak, I can say I'm weak. If I have problems, I can say I have problems. You know why? Because God values and uses authentic people. Do you know why around here that I talk about my flaws and my weaknesses and my struggles? So I want you to know that it's okay for you to be flawed and have weaknesses and have struggles. People are not attracted to holier-than-thou types. Are you with me? People are not attracted to those who stand up and tell how great they are and that they've never sinned in 20 years. Okay? I'm good if I can go 20 minutes. You know what I'm talking about, right? So I want to be authentic. I want to tell you, hey, I don't have it all together. I struggle with my faith just like you do. I struggle with attitudes just like you do. I was so angry yesterday, I could just confess. I was so angry. I was trying to renew my tag at Fiesta. They do the tag renewal. And I have all my paperwork. I get there. I had my car inspected in January. Okay? Passed inspection. I go to get my tag renewal, and they tell me my inspection is invalid. I said, I just had it done in January. It passed. And they said, well, the new state law that took effect in March says that you have to have your inspection within 90 days of your tag renewal. And if you don't, you have to get it re-inspected and pay the fee again. Now, just to say, I wasn't happy. Just to say, I had a few kind words to that person. And then I went and got my car re-inspected and paid the $25. And I had another kind word to that guy that did it. And anyway, you know what? Do you ever get angry at stuff? Yeah? So do I. You ever go through any times where you struggle with certain issues in your life? Yeah, so do I. I am the flawedest person, if that is a word. I don't know if flawedest person is even a word, and I'm an English teacher. I am the person with the most flaws in this room, okay? I'm the person with the most, and you know what? That's okay to say that. Number one, because this is the second chance grace place around here at Lifepointe Church, but also because God values authenticity, and it is out of our authenticity that our greatest ministry flows. If you don't believe that, look at what Paul says, okay? Paul says, we don't try to trick anyone, like trying to be a phony baloney. We don't try to twist the word of God. We teach the truth plainly, showing everyone who we really are. Paul is saying, listen, when you see me flaws and all. He goes on to say, then they can know in their hearts what kind of people we are in God's sight. Because here's what I always say to people. If God can save somebody like me, he can certainly save you. If God can use somebody like me, he can certainly use somebody like you. If God can work through this flawed container, this flawed vessel, he can certainly work through you, okay? You know what being authentic means? Just think about this. Write it down in your margin if you want to. Authenticity means I don't have to hide my faults. I love that. I don't have to hide my faults. Authenticity number 2 means I don't have to try to be somebody else. That's what it means to be real. So I don't have to hide my faults. I don't have to be perfect and walk on water all the way to San Antonio next week. I'll never get there. God uses real, flawed, imperfect human beings to do his will. And if you don't think so, let me just give you a little rundown. I did a little study for this message. Think about the Bible characters that God used. This is true. You ready? Abraham was old, really old. Like his ministry didn't even kick in until he was like 100, okay? So he had like a lot of years he wasn't serving. I mean, he's old. Any of you old people out there, well, I can't serve God, I'm too old. Yeah, is that right? 100-year-old guy. Okay, Jacob was a chronic, habitual, pathological liar. Leah, now don't take offense, Leah was just kind of homely, okay? I mean, that girl was hit with an ugly stick. I mean, you read the story. She was just like really, really homely, and God had a plan. Okay, it's not. Joseph was abused. Gideon was poor. Samson was a sex addict. Read his story. Rahab was a prostitute. Jonah was a racist. Elijah was suicidal. Jeremiah was depressed. David had an affair and then had his mistress's husband killed. John the Baptist was eccentric. Peter had an anger problem. Martha worried. Thomas doubted. Zacchaeus was a cheater. So let me ask you, what is your excuse? God chooses and uses flawed, imperfect people as long as they're authentic. As long as they're real, as long as they do what they do for God. Because you know what happens? When we're real, when we're authentic, the glory doesn't go to us, it goes to God. Look at what Paul says. The Spirit we receive does not make us slaves to fear again. What kind of fear do we live with? If somebody really knew what I was like. ... We're afraid of being exposed. We're afraid of being real. We're afraid of being authentic. But Paul says we don't have that fear anymore, okay? And when I understand mercy, when I really understand mercy, I don't have to try to prove my worth to you. You know why? Because God's already said I'm worth something. You want to know how much you're worth? Look at the cross. If you were the only person on this planet, Jesus still would have stretched out his arms and died because you're worth that much. And when I understand mercy, I don't have to wallow in my mistakes. I don't have to be disqualified anymore because God uses flawed, imperfect people, and all I have to do is look at Paul. So we are talking about you were made for a mission, and that mission means that it's an incredible privilege you have to serve God, and that mission means that you can be authentic and real because God will use you just like you are. Watch the screen just for a moment.
Purpose. Everyone living today has a unique purpose. You are a divine design. You are not here by chance. You are not here by coincidence. God has put you here at this precise time in our nation to make a difference. The sad reality is most of us will go to our grave with our best stuff still in us. There will be songs unsung, books unwritten, poetry unspoken, acts of kindness and love unshared, business endeavors and entrepreneurial pursuits never accomplished because we have allowed a lack of courage, fortitude, and strength to hold us back, better known as fear, fear of the unknown, fear of launching out into the deep to experience life at its fullest. Abraham Maslow said this. He said 1 in 100 people will actually experience and maximize their life to the fullest. I think that number is just way, way, way too low. It is about time that we begin to understand and know that God has created you for this time for a unique purpose. And He has something that you have within yourself that only you can give to society to make society a better place. And I say decide today to give it away. You are a field. And when you first look at that field, it looks like an ordinary field, but it's not the field, it's what's inside the field that makes it unique. And when you break ground on yourself, then you will discover there's riches inside of you that will bless others and bless yourself for a lifetime and well past your lifetime. There's gold inside of you. There's riches and diamonds and emeralds. There is all. You are a wealth of resources. So stop looking from without for your big breakthrough. Your big breakthrough is when you discover and develop that God has put inside of you everything.
That's amazing. That's who you are, okay? Man, that was a great word from Dr. Guy Earl. Now, I showed that clip because I love what he said. I love what he said, and it fits right into this idea about being authentic. You know why else I showed that clip? Because next Sunday, when I'm in San Antonio, guess who's going to be standing right here? Dr. Guy Earl. He's going to be our guest speaker. And guys, if you have never heard Dr. Guy Earl, you are going to get blown away. This is one of the best speakers you will ever hear in your entire life. Dr. Guy Earl is the head of the counseling department at Oak Cliff Bible Church, that little church in Dallas, pastored by Dr. Tony Evans. You know, that little church, about 15,000 people. You know, Dr. Guy Earl is the head of the counseling department. He's a great friend of mine, and he is coming to speak to us. And you guys cannot miss Dr. Guy Earl, and you need to be here, and you need to bring a bunch of people with you next Sunday. It's going to be an amazing service. Every time he comes, he just blows everybody's mind, okay? So you're going to love Dr. Guy Earl. But what he said is so true. The greatest resources that God has for the world lie within you. Okay, mission mindset number 1. It's an incredible privilege. Mission mindset number 2, you got to be authentic. Mission mindset number 3, fulfilling God's mission is never about me. You know what Paul said? Paul said our message, our mission, our ministry is not about ourselves. Guys, if you get in this thinking it's going to be something that you're going to get a lot out of, you're missing the whole point. It's about Jesus Christ as Lord. We are merely servants for your sakes. In other words, what we do for you. Paul said this, we are like clay jars in which this treasure is stored, okay? We are clay jars, okay? You know what happens to clay jars in the first century? They would start to have hairline cracks, and they would start to crack, and they would have to be filled in occasionally. You know what? The church is full of cracked pots. That's what it is, okay? That's true. We're all just a bunch of crackpots, okay? The church is full of crackpots. That's what the verse means. We're just like crackpots in which the treasure is stored. You know the cool thing? If you put a candle inside a cracked pot, guess what? The light shines through the cracks. That's why God takes cracked people, because his light shines through your life. Isn't that amazing? And so, all right, we're all a bunch of crackpots. It doesn't matter, because it's not about us anyway. It's about him. The real power to minister, the real power to go on mission, the real power to serve, what does it say? Comes from who? God, and not from us. That's why fulfilling God's mission is never about me. It's always about him. And there are 2 ways it's about him. I want you to write somewhere in your notes these letters, HGHP. Just write them anywhere, HGHP. Because this is the heart of understanding that mission is never about me. Because what we do in mission, guys, you were made for a mission, okay? You were made for a mission. Remember that. Every morning you wake up and you pray, God, I want to honor you, honor God, and I want to help people. That's what HGHP means. Honor God, help people. That's mission. Honor God, help people. That's ministry. Honor God, help people. That's service. That's all it is. You don't have to go to seminary to do that. You don't have to have been a Christian for 20 years to do that. You don't have to be an adult to do that. You don't have to be perfect to do that. Everybody in this room, from the children in this room to the oldest adults in this room, everybody in this room can honor God and help people every day. It's a choice. And when I say you were made for a mission and it's not about you, this mission that God has called you to is bigger than you, and it is something that you do to honor him and to help people see him. In fact, Jesus said in Matthew 6 on the Sermon on the Mount, let your light so shine before people that they will see the good works you do. That's mission, ministry, and service. And they'll say how great you are. No. They will see the good works you do, and he says they will honor your Father in heaven. Honor God, help people. Honor God. In fact, we got to get shirts with that on it, okay? That's our motto around here. Second Chance Grace Place, all we're about is honoring God and helping people. That's what we want to do. Every ministry you do in this church, we want to honor God and help people. Our students going to San Antonio next week, they're going to be with Premier Iglesia Cristiana. It is a very poor church in a very difficult community, and we're going to be reaching out to the children of the neighborhood, and we're going to show them God's love, and we're going to honor God and help people. That's the whole reason we're going there. And so what does it mean? It means I can't do it on my own. It's a recognition I need Him. And I don't ever do it for myself. When I get in this mission business and I realize it's never about me, I can't do it. God, I need you. And God, I don't do it for myself and to get pats on the back and get the attaboys and everybody think you're so great. It's about pointing people to Him. Fulfilling God's mission is never about me. It's an incredible privilege. It means we got to be authentic, and we got to realize the source of our power. We're just cracked pots. We're going to let the light shine through us because we need God. We want to honor Him and help people. Mission mindset number 4, write this one down. Fulfilling God's mission uses my pain to help others. You know, here's a big issue. When you have pain, when you have problems, when you have struggles, when you have trials, anybody describing your life? Pain, problems, struggle, trials. That's not my life. That's my morning so far, right? No, okay. You all know that. I mean, sometimes, listen. Sometimes, because of our problems, our struggles, our pain, our trials, we opt out of ministry and mission and service because we've got to focus on us. You know what I'm talking about? Man, I've got a lot of problems. I've got a lot of struggles. I've got a lot of pain. And what happens is we become so myopic that we become the focus of our life. We focus all of our attention and energies trying to struggle with the problems and the pain and the stuff. And guess what happens? When you begin to focus on you and your problems, it makes them worse. Can I tell you the truth? You're talking to somebody that has spent my entire adult life trying to come to grips with my dysfunctional past. You're talking to somebody that grew up with the worst kind of parenting, the worst kind of situation, sexual abuse, alcoholism, drug use, all of that stuff I grew up with. You're dealing with the person that has dealt the past 16 years with a spinal cord injury, coming to grips with all of that and what it means. You're talking to a person that understands your pain and understands your problems and understands your trials, because I've been there and I have learned over the past years of my life, the time I focus on me and my problems, that only makes them worse. In fact, I will stand here today to tell you, when you start taking your eyes off of yourself and your situation, your problems, and you start looking to serve others, when you start looking to be on mission, when you start looking to be in ministry, it is going to lift you up like nothing else will. Look at what Paul says. I love this. I've worked much harder than anybody else. I've been in prison more frequently than anybody else. I've been flogged more severely. I've been exposed to death again and again. 5 times I received from the Jews the 40 lashes minus 1. 5 times 40, okay, that is what? 200, right? Minus 5. So 195 stripes on his back. If Paul took off his shirt, you'd see the scars. 3 times I was beaten with rods, like baseball bats. Once I was pelted with stones. 3 times I was shipwrecked. I spent a night and a day in the open sea. I've been constantly on the move. I've been in danger from rivers, from bandits, dangers from my fellow Jews, danger from the Gentiles, danger in the city, danger in the country, danger at sea, danger from false believers. I've labored and toiled, have gone without sleep. Look at it. I've known hunger and thirst and have gone without food. I've been cold and naked. And besides all this stuff, I face the daily pressure of my concern for all the churches. So what's your excuse? If he's serving God with all that, what's your excuse? Okay? Nobody out there has been shipwrecked 3 times, I can guarantee it. Nobody out there has 195 scars on your back from a beating. Nobody out there has been in prison for their faith. What I'm trying to tell you is, You serve God on mission and ministry and service in spite of your pain and problems, because that sometimes is how God uses you to help others. Who better to talk to an alcoholic than a former alcoholic? Who better to talk to a woman that struggles with guilt over abortion than somebody that's had one? Who better to struggle with somebody facing cancer than somebody that's faced cancer? Who better to deal with people that are going through pain than the same people that have gone through pain that have been on the other side of it? You see, God has a purpose for your pain so that you can help other people through theirs. Do you hear me? Your mission in life may be that you're going to use and process your pain so that God is going to use it to help other people in their life. Look what Paul says. We often suffer problems, pain, struggles, but we're never crushed. Even when we don't know what to do, we never give up. In times of trouble, that may be every day of your life, God is with us. And when we're knocked down, we get back up again. Look at this. Paul's had all these problems. Paul has all this suffering. But here's the bottom line. The next slide puts it into such perspective. Everybody look on screen. All these sufferings of ours are for your benefit. Paul says the whole reason God is allowing me to go through this is so that I can help you when you go through your stuff. And your greatest life mission, your greatest life ministry, your greatest act of service may be helping people who are where you once were. I love it. All these sufferings of ours are for your benefit. Okay, I don't know what happened, but whatever happened to the lights, they're gone. Okay, thank you. Now I'm here. Okay, and the more of you who are won to Christ, you see, that's the bottom line. Paul was always how we can win more people to Christ. The more there are to thank him for his incredible, great mercy, and the more, look, God gets the glory. So when you use your pain to reach out to others, God gets the glory. And look what it says. Therefore, this is why we never give up. Though our bodies are dying, yeah, look at us. Our spirits are being renewed every day. For our present troubles, you got some troubles, got some struggles, got some pain, are quite small, and they won't last very long, yet they produce an immeasurably great glory that will last forever. In other words, when I invest my life in mission, ministry, and service, even with my problems, God's going to get some great glory out of it. Listen, look up here. Don't let your present problems, struggles, and pain keep you from being on mission, because they may be your greatest mission. Mission mindset number 5. Fulfilling God's mission keeps me focused on eternity. Why? Because you know what? I focus 99.9% of my life on the here and now, when we really ought to be focused on what really matters. You know, we're going to live 70, 80, 90 years, maybe, some shorter, some longer. But compared to eternity, it is a grain of sand on the beach. Fulfilling God's mission keeps me focused on eternity. That's why Paul says again, these little troubles are getting us ready for an eternal glory that will make all these troubles seem like nothing. Now, guys, my undergrad degree is in behavioral sciences, and I remember studying human motivation. That's part of the course of study. And there are really 2 types of human motivation. There is what is called intrinsic motivation, which is internal motivation. It is motivation that you have within you that causes you to do something, okay? It may be willpower. It may be just your desire to get ahead, whatever it is. It is intrinsic internal motivation. Nobody has to tell you to do it. You just do it, okay? And then there is extrinsic motivation. External motivation means I get up and go to work because if I don't get up and go to work, I'm going to be fired by somebody else. That's external motivation. You know what I'm talking about? If I don't clean my room as a 10 or 12-year-old kid, my mom's going to take away my iPad or my iPhone, and she's going to ground me, and I'm going to be miserable. So that external motivation gets me to do something, right? So there's intrinsic internal motivation. There's extrinsic, there's external motivation. What do you think should be the greatest motivation for us as believers? Number 3, which I didn't mention, is eternal motivation. Because there are really 3 types. Internal, within me. External, outside of me. And eternal means I focus on what really matters. And when you have eternal motivation, when you are motivated by the things of God, when you are moved by the heart of God, when you begin to focus on not just here and now, but on eternity, it changes everything about your life. And then you want to serve, then you want to minister, then you want to be on mission, because really that eternity is a lot more important than here and now. In fact, Pastor Rick Warren, I love what he says. He says, life is just preparation for eternity. It's like the warm-up lap. You know, if you go to the races, they have the warm-up lap. They have the pace car going around the track. You know, that's all this life is. It's just that one time around the track, and then the real race begins. Life is just preparation for eternity. So, guys, if you put all the eggs in the basket of your life and identity and everything right here and now, guess what? Poof, it's going to be over. The Bible says you're here one day, poof, and you're gone. That's what the Bible says. You're like a vapor. You're like a mist. You're like a puff of smoke. You're like a weed that goes up in the morning and dies at night. That's how the Bible describes human life. And so if all you do is think about now with internal, external motivation, guys, we need to see through the lens of eternity. And that's why Paul says, we don't look at the troubles we can see right now. Rather, we look, what's the word? Forward to what we've not seen. What haven't we seen yet? Heaven. What haven't we seen yet? Eternity. What haven't we seen yet? Jesus. We look forward to what lies ahead. For the troubles we will see will soon be over, but the joys to come of mission, ministry, and service, the joys to come of mission, ministry, and service will what? Last. So where's your focus? Now, I know, I'm human. I know just like you. I get caught up in the rat race. I get caught up in the dilemma of life. I get caught up in the bills. I get caught up in the schedule. I get caught up in the busyness. I get caught up in the stuff. I get caught up in everything you get caught up in. And you see, that's the enemy's biggest tool. Not that we're going to deny God and shake our fist at him. We're just going to get distracted and focus on here and now instead of eternity. As long as he can keep you focused on this stuff, and keep you not focused on that stuff, he's going to really neutralize your effectiveness for the kingdom. So every day you have to wake up in the morning. And you know, Jonathan Edwards was a great Puritan leader. And it is said in his biography that every day he woke up and he said, God, stamp eternity on my eyeballs. That's a weird prayer to pray. He prayed it every day. God, stamp eternity on my eyeballs. And what that meant is Jonathan Edwards prayed, God, let me see every situation of life through the lens of eternity. That this isn't all there is. That leaving Lifepointe as soon as Pastor Chuck's over to get to lunch isn't all there is. That the Rangers playing baseball isn't all there is. That the Cowboys coming up this fall isn't all there is. There's more to life than this. It is eternity, and that's where our hearts lie. So, we have to decide to keep focused. Now, let's remember, it is an incredible privilege to serve God. God wants us to be authentic. And when we are authentic, God uses us to do incredible things. And God processes our pain. As it's not about me, as I focus on him, he processes our pain as I focus on eternity. You are made for a mission. Now, here's the thing. Anybody remember, now this is dating me, from the 60s, the TV show that came out, wildly popular, called Mission Impossible. Anybody remember that? Peter Graves was the star of the original one. Okay? And then it was made into a series of movies by that little short guy, Tom Cruise, Mission Impossible, okay? But they would always say in the original TV series, he would get a taped message that would self-destruct. And it would say, your mission, if you choose to accept it. Anybody remember that word? They'd always say that. Your mission, if you choose to accept it. Now listen, here's where we are today. God has a mission for you. God has a ministry for you. God has something for you to do in this world. But you've got to choose to accept it. God doesn't force his mission on you. God doesn't make you serve him. God doesn't make you do what he wants you to do. He lays it out and says, listen, if you do this, you'll have the best life possible. And if you do this, you will impact lives for all of eternity. And if you do this, you'll have the greatest joy you've ever known. You'll have the greatest life you've ever known. If you do this, it's available, but you got to choose it. You got to choose it. You got to dedicate yourself to it, okay? Like I said, mission doesn't mean you have to go on a trip. You might. You know, our students are going down next week, and I will put an appeal out to any student that's here. Pastor Chris has already told me, if you want to go with us, we'll find room for you, because we're going to go down there and we are going to change eternity for some of those kids. And you can spend your life here just doing the normal stuff and doing the normal stuff. You will never have the life you're going to have down there for a week. It's going to be fun. It's going to be exciting. It's going to be the most crazy thing we've ever done. It's going to be the best one we've ever done. And you don't want to miss it. Let me tell you another secret. Pastor Yuan from Premier Iglesia Christiana, some of you have met him. His parents were in the concentration camps in Cuba when he was a child. They were arrested during the regime of Castro when he first took over in the 60s. And Pastor Yuan has a heart for his homeland. He has a heart for Cuba. And he calls me and he said, Pastor Chuck, that's how he talks. Pastor Chuck, I'm so excited. Yeah, Pastor Yuan, what are you excited about? He's always excited. Okay? Pastor Chuck, you and Lifepointe are going with us to Cuba next summer. They're going to Cuba on a mission trip, 2017, July. They've already got it set up. And they want us to send a team from Lifepointe to join them to go to Cuba next summer. Can you imagine how cool that would be? To go on a mission trip to a communist country? Because they're still under dictatorship, guys. I mean, we've opened relationships a little bit, but they still have a communistic government. And we're going to go there to proclaim the gospel. We're going to go there to share Christ. And it's an incredible journey. So some of you might already be thinking, and I want you to pray, God, do you want me to go to Cuba next summer? Start putting that in your heart. Because, you know, going to San Antonio costs about $7,000, $8,000. Going to Cuba is going to cost a lot more than that. We're going to have to really pray about it and get God's help with this. But it's going to be great. So what are you willing to say today? What are you willing to do? How are you willing to step out of your comfort zone? Because we get in the box, okay? My normal life box, okay? Get up, go to work, come home. Get up, go to work, come home. Get up, go to school, come home. Play some video games along the way. Get up, go to work, text. Get up, go to work, look at kitties on Facebook. You know what I'm talking about? All the stuff we do, you know, what are we going to do something significant with our lives? What are we going to do to really do something significant?
We hope that you've been encouraged by this message. For the outline of this message, more exclusive online content, and other resources, please visit www.pointe.us. That is www.pointe.us.